The mop handle clattered against the marble, the sound echoing in the cavernous silence of the 50th floor. Reese Calder's heart seized in his chest. It wasn't the noise that stopped him. It was the 8-year-old girl standing 5 feet away, her small body trembling. Her designer dress was rumpled, her face pale with a terror so profound it silenced the air around them. "Mom's on the floor," Lyra Thornton whispered, her voice a tiny, broken thing. "She's not moving." Reese felt a cold dread, the ghost of his old life rising up. He dropped the mop, the scent of ammonia and clean wax forgotten. He ran. He pushed open the heavy oak door to the CEO's office, and the world went still. Anya Thornton, the most powerful woman in the building, was slumped behind her desk. Her teacup was still steaming beside a scattered stack of papers. Her eyes were open, but they saw nothing. Her breathing was a shallow, almost imperceptible flutter. The past crashed into the present. The years of training, the hundreds of calls, the muscle memory of a life he'd left behind, took over. He was no longer Reese the janitor. He was Reese the paramedic. He vaulted over a plush chair, his fingers immediately finding the carotid artery on Anya's neck. The pulse was thready, a butterfly's wing against his skin. Too slow, dangerously slow. He scanned her face. No cyanosis around the lips, no obvious trauma. But her pupils were like pinpricks, constricted to the size of a needle's tip. He leaned closer, inhaling carefully. Faint, but there. A bitter, almond-like scent clinging to the air around her. "Lyra, sweetie, I need you to go outside and wait by the elevators, okay? Can you do that for me?" His voice was calm, the practiced calm he'd used for frightened children at accident scenes. She nodded, tears streaming down her face, and fled. Reese pulled out his phone, his thumb dialing 911 with a steadiness that betrayed the frantic pounding in his chest. "I need paramedics at Thornton Industries, 50th floor, CEO's office, unconscious female, approximately 40 years old. Bradycardic, myotic pupils. Possible poisoning." He gave the address. The words clinical and precise, a language he hadn't spoken in years. He laid Anya gently on the floor, clearing her airway, tilting her head back. He tracked the rise and fall of her chest. A barely visible motion. Each second stretched into an eternity. He was acutely aware of his uniform, the gray janitor's shirt sticking to his back. He was a ghost in this building, a nobody. And a nobody was about to have a lot of questions to answer. The wail of sirens grew from a distant cry to a roar that filled the street 50 floors below. Soon, the elevator doors hissed open and 2 paramedics rushed in, their gear rattling. They were young, focused, moving with the confident energy Reese remembered so well. "What have we got?" the lead paramedic, a man with a thick neck and tired eyes, asked, not looking at Reese but at the woman on the floor. "Found her about 3 minutes ago," Reese said, backing away to give them space. "Pulse is in the low 40s, pinpoint pupils. I think it's a toxin, maybe an organophosphate or—" The medic cut him off with a sharp look, a flicker of annoyance. "Sir, please let us work." He turned to his partner. "Let's get her on O2. Pupils look like a possible opioid OD, but the bradycardia could be a stroke. Let's prep for a CVA protocol." Reese's blood ran cold. CVA, cerebrovascular accident. A stroke. They were going down the wrong path. The standard drug for an ischemic stroke, a thrombolytic, would dissolve blood clots. But if it wasn't a clot, if it was what he suspected, that drug would be a death sentence. "It's not a stroke," Reese said, his voice harder than he intended. The lead medic ignored him, checking Anya's blood pressure. "BP is tanking. Let's push a thrombolytic as soon as we get her in the bus. It could save her life." "No!" The word exploded out of Reese, raw and commanding. He stepped forward, planting his feet between the paramedic and Anya. "You can't. That will kill her. Her symptoms aren't consistent with a CVA. There's no facial droop, no unilateral weakness. It's a classic toxidrome. Did you smell the air?" The paramedic finally looked at him, truly looked at him, his gaze a mixture of disbelief and fury. Who the hell are you? Get out of my way before I have security remove you. My name is Reese Calder. I was a paramedic for 12 years, Reese said, his voice low and steady. A desperate gamble. And I'm telling you, you're about to make a fatal mistake. Test her for cyanide, now. The room was frozen in a tense standoff. The second paramedic hesitated, the vial in his hand. The lead medic's face was flushed with anger. A janitor, telling him how to do his job. It was unthinkable. But there was something in Reese's eyes, a desperate, terrifying certainty, that gave him pause. It was the look of a man who had seen death up close and knew its many faces. Fine, the medic spat, his pride warring with a flicker of doubt. Run a rapid talk screen, but if you're wrong, I'm having you arrested for obstruction. The seconds it took for his partner to administer the colorimetric test felt like hours. Reese didn't breathe. He watched the small strip, his entire life, his daughter Luna's future, hanging on a chemical reaction. Then, it happened. The strip turned a deep, undeniable blue. The lead medic's face went white. "Oh my God," he whispered. He looked at Reese, his anger replaced by a chilling awe. "It's positive. High-level exposure." He grabbed his radio, his voice urgent and sharp. "Dispatch, this is Medic 34. We have a confirmed cyanide poisoning. Have the ER prep the antidote kit. I repeat, confirmed cyanide," as they worked frantically to administer the hydroxycobalamin, stabilizing Anya before moving her. Reese stepped back, the adrenaline leaving him shaky. In the controlled chaos, his eyes scanned the room. How? An aerosol? In the drink? His gaze fell on the floor beneath a heavy mahogany desk, a glint of metal. Small, brass, intricately machined. It looked like a nozzle of some kind, no bigger than a thumbnail. It had rolled into the shadow under the desk's lip, almost invisible. He heard footsteps in the hall. Security, police. His old life had taught him another lesson. Trust no one. Evidence could be lost. Narratives could be twisted. Before he could second-guess himself, he bent down as if to pick up a stray piece of lint, his hand closing around the small metal object. It was cool against his skin. He slipped it into his pocket just as two police officers and a frantic-looking woman with sharp features and the same dark hair as Anya swept into the room. "What happened?" "What's going on with my sister?" the woman demanded, her eyes wide with a practiced look of panic. Reese recognized her from her ID badge photos. Rowena Vance, Anya's half-sister and the company's COO. The lead paramedic, still pale, was explaining the situation. Rowena's gaze flickered past the medics, past the gurney, and landed on Reese. Her eyes, unlike her frantic tone, were cold as ice. "And who is he?" she asked, her voice dripping with disdain. "What was the janitor doing in here?" The officer, a man with a heavy-set jaw and watchful eyes, took a step toward Reese. "That's a good question. What were you doing in here, sir?" Reese met his gaze, forcing himself to stay calm. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a cold, metallic taste in his mouth. "I was mopping the hall by the elevators." Her daughter Lyra ran out of the office. She said, "Mom's not moving." I entered to render aid and called 911. He kept his voice flat, professional, reciting the facts as he would have on an old incident report. The lead paramedic, snapping his kit shut, looked up. "He's the one who diagnosed the poison, officer. Saved her life. Stopped us from giving her a thrombolytic. Said he was a paramedic." "A paramedic?" Rowena's voice was sharp, a flicker of something new in her eyes. "He's the janitor." "I was a paramedic," Reese clarified, his voice tight. "Grady, what's the situation?" A new voice cut through the tension. A man in a rumpled suit stepped into the office, his expression weary, his eyes sharp. He was older, with graying hair, and he moved with an unhurried authority. This was the man in charge. "Detective Kincaid," Officer Grady said, visibly relieved. "We have a confirmed poisoning. The victim is Anya Thornton, en route to St. Jude's, unstable. Her sister, Miss Vance, is here." He gestured to Rowena, then nodded toward Reese. "This is Reese Calder. He's the night janitor. He found the victim and, according to medics, diagnosed the poison." Kincaid's gaze swept over Reese. taking in the gray uniform, the mop bucket still sitting in the hallway, the exhaustion in his eyes. A janitor diagnosed cyanide poisoning? That's a new one. Rowena Vance stepped forward, her hand fluttering to her throat. Her eyes were fixed on Reese, her expression a perfect mask of dawning, reluctant realization. Oh my God, I think I've heard that name. Calder detective, I hate to even bring this up, but wasn't he a paramedic? I think I remember hearing about a lawsuit. Something terrible. About a child he lost? Reese stiffened. The old wound, always just below the surface, tore open. Kincaid's eyes narrowed. He looked at Reese, then at Rowena. You're saying he has a history? I'm just saying, Rowena stammered, playing her part perfectly. He's a man with medical knowledge. And he's a janitor, here, with access. I'm sure it's nothing, but he was in the room. Kincaid turned to a security tech who had just arrived. Get me the security feed for this office and the hallway. Now, the tech plugged his laptop into a nearby port. He typed for a moment, his brow furrowing. Detective, we've got a problem. The camera in the office, feed 50A, it went dark. It looks like a network glitch. It went offline at 8:52 p.m. Kincaid looked at Reese. When did you call 911? I don't know. Around 8:56, maybe. The feed comes back on at 8:56:03, the tech confirmed. And Mr. Calder is on the phone, standing over Ms. Thornton's body. That's a 4-minute gap. Reese's stomach tightened. That's impossible. I wasn't even in the room then. I was in the hall. Let's see the hallway camera, 50B, Kincaid ordered. That one's fine, sir. Running it now. The tech turned his laptop. Here's Mr. Calder. Timestamp is 8:51 p.m. He's mopping. The video played. They saw Reese pushing his mop, his movement steady. Then, at 8:51:55, he stopped. He looked toward the CEO's office, his head tilted. I heard her, Reese said, his voice desperate. I heard the girl Lyra. A sound. The hallway mic won't pick up a whisper from inside that office, Kincaid said, his eyes glued to the screen. And here, 8:52 p.m., you walk out of frame towards the office. The exact same second the internal camera dies. I was checking the noise. Then what's this? Kincaid pointed. 8:55 p.m. The girl runs out of the office, and you're right there. You grab her. No! She ran to me. I was calming her down. It looks like she's running from you, Mr. Calder, Kincaid said, his voice cold. And then you lead her right back into the office, where the camera clicks back on. Your story doesn't match the tape. The tape shows you walk out of frame, the camera in the office dies, and for 3 minutes, you're unaccounted for. Then you're found with the victim. It looks like you tampered with the camera, went in, and the girl walked in on you. That's not true. I saved her life. Rowena put a hand over her mouth. Detective. A janitor. He has access to cleaning chemicals, doesn't he? All sorts of things. Kincaid nodded, his face hard. The simple story was back. A disgruntled ex-paramedic, a grudge, access to chemicals. It was clean. Grady. Take Mr. Calder to the break room. He's not to leave. Get a team, search his locker, his cart. I want everything he's touched in the last 12 hours bagged as evidence. Reese's phone buzzed in his pocket. He saw the notification. A text from his 10-year-old daughter, Luna. When are you coming home? Mrs. Petrov is making me eat broccoli. A wave of pure, unadulterated fear washed over him. He had to get home to her. I have to go, he said, his voice shaking. My daughter is waiting for me. Kincaid blocked his path. You're not going anywhere, Mr. Calder. Right now, you're the only suspect we have. The break room on the 50th floor was just another glass box, sterile and cold. Reese sat at a cheap laminate table, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. Officer Grady stood by the door, arms crossed, his presence a silent weight. Every minute that ticked by on the wall clock was a minute closer to his daughter Luna waking up and finding him gone. He replayed the hallway security feed in his mind. It looks like you're running from you. It was a perfect lie, a twist of perception. Rowena hadn't just been in the office. She'd been in the security room, or she had someone who was. She had orchestrated the camera glitch, but she'd also known the angle of the hallway camera. She knew it wouldn't see Lyra come out, only see Reese go toward the door. It was a meticulous, brutal piece of framing. The door opened, and Kincaid walked in, his face set in stone. He tossed a file on the table, which landed with a flat, final thwack. Reese Calder, paramedic, license surrendered 4 years ago, civil suit, wrongful death of a minor. The board cleared you, but the mother's family hounded you out of the profession. You lose your career, your house, your wife. You end up here, pushing a mop for $12 an hour, cleaning the toilets of people who have everything you lost. That has nothing to do with this, Reese said, his voice a low tremor. I told you, I saved her. Did you? Kincaid leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Or did you just get cold feet? You bring the poison, you stage the scene, maybe you rig up some fancy aerosol, something from your paramedic days. But then the little girl walks in. You panic. You can't let her die too. Not another kid. So you save her. You get to be the hero, the one man who could diagnose the impossible, all while covering your own tracks. That's insane, Reese whispered, the blood draining from his face. Kincaid was twisting the one good thing he'd done into the linchpin of his guilt. Is it? Or is it the story of a man who snapped? A man desperate to prove he's still a big shot, not just the guy who scrubs the floors. Before Reese could answer, Officer Grady's radio crackled. Detective! Forensics found something. The janitor's personal locker, sub-level B. Kincaid's eyes lit up, a cold, triumphant glint. He nodded to Grady, who left the room. Reese's heart hammered. His locker. What was in his locker? A spare uniform, a picture of Luna, a half-eaten bag of... Grady returned, holding a large, clear evidence bag. Inside was a dark brown glass bottle, half full of a thick, oily liquid. What is that? Kincaid asked. Lab says it's a specialized industrial solvent, Grady read from his notes. Specifically an organophosphate compound. Not on any Thornton Industries supply manifest, but the lab tech says it's a primary component used in creating certain complex poisons. A perfect precursor. Reese stared at the bottle, his mind reeling. I've never seen that before in my life. I don't know what that is. Somebody put it there. The same person who doctored the cameras? Who? Kincaid snapped. The cleaning supply fairy? This was in your personal locker, Calder. The one you keep your kid's picture in. Rowena! Reese shouted, his voice cracking. He was losing. The trap was closing. Rowena Vance! The sister! She wants the company! She framed me! Check her access! She was there! She pointed the finger at me! Kincaid sighed, a theatrical, weary sound. The grieving sister. The one who's been at the hospital, hysterical for the last hour. Or the disgruntled janitor, with a tragic past, a hero complex, and a bottle of poison precursor in his locker. Who do you think the DA is going to believe? Reese felt the floor drop out. He was buried. Every word he said just made him sound more desperate, more guilty. Kincaid stood up, his chair scraping loudly on the tile. Reese Calder. He pulled out a pair of handcuffs, the metal glinting under the harsh lights. You are under arrest for the attempted murder of Anya Thornton. No, please, Reese stammered, his eyes wide with panic. I have a daughter. Luna. She's 10. She's at home. I have to get to her. You can't do this. You should have thought of that before you brought poison into this building, Kincaid said, his voice devoid of pity. He grabbed Reese's left wrist. I didn't do it. I saved her, Reese yelled, a purely instinctual, terrified denial. He didn't pull away, but his body tensed, the injustice of it a physical shock. Tell it to the judge, Kincaid said, ratcheting the first cuff shut. As his hands were pulled behind his back, Reese felt the small, cold object in his pocket press against his hip. The brass nozzle. His only proof, his only hope. He'd palmed it, a reflex from a past life, and that reflex was now the only thing that mattered. Kincaid's men hadn't searched him yet, only his locker. Kincaid cinched the second cuff, the metal biting into his skin. You have the right to remain silent. Reese didn't hear the rest. His world had shrunk to two things: the image of Luna, alone in the apartment, and the secret, heavy weight in his pocket. He had to keep it safe. He couldn't give it to Kincaid. The detective had his story, his precursor, his perfect suspect. The nozzle would just be lost in an evidence room. He had to hold on. He had to find someone, anyone who would believe him. "Let's go," Kincaid said, grabbing his arm. Reese was marched out of the break room, a prisoner. As they passed the CEO's office, he saw Rowena Vance. She was standing with a detective, a handkerchief pressed to her face. As Reese was pushed past, her eyes lifted and met his over the white cloth. They weren't red from crying. They were cold, sharp, and glittering with absolute chilling victory. The walk from the 50th floor to the precinct was a blur of fluorescent lights and cold, assessing stares. Reese was paraded through the pristine lobby of Thornton Industries, his hands cuffed behind his back, his gray janitor's uniform feeling like a costume of guilt. The night security guards, men he'd shared coffee with just hours before, now looked at him with a mixture of pity and distrust. He was no longer Reese. He was the monster from the news, the disgruntled janitor. At the precinct, the dehumanization was swift and brutal. He was processed, not as a man, but as a piece of evidence. His fingerprints were rolled in black ink, his mugshot taken under a light so harsh it carved new lines of despair into his face. They brought him to a small room to inventory his personal effects. "Empty your pockets into the bag," the booking officer said, his voice a flat, bored monotone. Reese's heart hammered. The nozzle. He was about to lose it. He slowly pulled out his wallet, his keys, a crumpled picture of Luna from his back pocket. The officer wasn't looking, just filling out a form. Reese's hand went into his other pocket, his fingers closing around the small, cold piece of brass. He had one chance. He fumbled with his wallet, accidentally dropping it. Cards and receipts scattered across the dirty floor. "Sorry," he mumbled. The officer sighed, an exasperated sound. "Just pick 'em up, Calder. I ain't got all night." As Reese knelt, his cuffed hands awkward, he palmed the nozzle. His eyes darted to his own shoe, a worn-out work boot. With a single, desperate movement, he jammed the nozzle down the side of his boot, pushing it deep until it lodged beneath the soft insole. It was a terrible, painful lump against his heel, but it was hidden. He gathered his cards, his hands shaking, and stood up, placing the wallet in the bag. He handed the officer his empty pockets. He was searched, a rough, impersonal pat-down. The officer's hands went over his ankles, his boots. Reese held his breath. The officer felt the boot, but the nozzle was deep inside, under his heel, the rigid sole masking the small lump. He was cleared. He was put in a holding cell, a concrete box that smelled of bleach and old fear. He sat on the cold steel bench, the nozzle digging into his foot, a sharp, constant reminder of the one piece of truth he still held. "Calder, you get one call," a guard said, his voice echoing. Reese was taken to a metal phone bolted to the wall. His fingers, clumsy and shaking, dialed his neighbor's number. "Hello?" Mrs. Petrov's voice was thin, reedy with sleep. "Alara, it's Reese. I'm at the downtown precinct. I've been arrested." A sharp intake of breath. "Oh, dear Lord. Reese, the police, they're saying you hurt that woman?" "It's a lie, Alara. It's not true. It's a setup." His voice broke. Is Luna okay? Is she asleep?" "She's asleep, dear." "She has no idea." Her voice was trembling. "Reese, what's going to happen?" I don't know. He pressed his forehead against the cold metal, his eyes squeezed shut. "I need you to tell her. When she wakes up, tell her Dad loves her. Tell her I'm fighting. And Alara, whatever you hear on the news, it's a lie. You have to believe me. Please." "Of course I do, dear." "Of course," she said. But he heard the quaver of doubt. He was contaminated. "I have to go." They're waiting. "Thank you, Alara, for everything." He hung up, the receiver heavy as lead. He slumped against the wall, the full weight of his despair crashing down. He had saved a woman's life, and in return, his own was being dismantled, piece by piece. An hour later, they took him to a small, windowless room. A woman was waiting for him, her hair pulled back in a severe bun, a worn-out briefcase at her feet. She looked as exhausted as he felt. "Mr. Calder, I'm Talia Weir," she said, her voice sharp and to the point. "No pity. I'm your court-appointed public defender. I've read the initial police report." She opened a file. "It's bad." "It's a frame-up," Reese said, his voice hoarse. "The solvent, the camera, it was all planted." It was her sister, Rowena Vance. "She wants the company." Talia didn't even look up from her notes. "Mr. Calder, everyone in here is framed. The DA doesn't see it that way. He sees a disgruntled ex-paramedic with a public lawsuit for losing a child. He sees a man with the medical knowledge to diagnose a rare poison because he's the one who administered it. That's Kincaid's theory. It's a lie." "It's a narrative," she corrected him, her voice dry. "And it's a strong one. They have you on camera walking toward the office the second the internal camera dies. They have a 4-minute gap where you're the only one near the scene. They have a bottle of precursor chemicals in your personal locker. And now," she sighed, "now they have a corroborating witness, Ms. Rowena Vance. She's already given a statement. She said she was worried about your obvious mental distress, that she'd seen you lingering near her sister's office for weeks. She's painting you as an obsessive stalker." Reese stared at her, horrified. That's not... She's lying." "Of course she is," Talia said, finally closing the file. "But it's her word, a grieving, powerful CEO, against yours. This case is airtight, Mr. Calder. They're going to bury you. My job is to get you the best possible plea deal." "A plea deal? For something I didn't do?" Talia looked at him, her eyes tired but not unkind. "My advice is to plead guilty to a lesser charge. Assault, maybe. With your history, the jury will crucify you on an attempted murder charge." Reese looked at this woman, his only lifeline, and she was already handing him an anchor. He couldn't trust her. Not with the nozzle. Not yet. He needed to see if she would even try to fight. He needed to give her a thread, just to see if she would pull it. "I didn't do it," he said, his voice dropping, the frantic energy replaced by a cold, hard resolve. "And I can prove it. But not if you've already given up." She sighed. "I haven't given up. I'm being realistic." "Then be realistic about this." Reese leaned forward, his eyes locked on hers. "Find Anya Thornton's executive assistant. Her name is Celia Hayes. She's loyal to Anya, not to Rowena. She's terrified, and she's probably in danger. Find her. Ask her what she knows about Rowena. Ask her about a Skunkworks R&D project. Ask her about an atomizer." Talia Weir's pen stopped scratching on her legal pad. She looked up, her tired eyes suddenly sharp, the professional cynicism fading for a split second. "Skunkworks? Atomizer? What are you talking about, Calder?" "That sounds like a spy movie." "I don't know," Reese said, his voice a low, urgent whisper. "But I know Rowena. I've seen her. She's not a screamer. She's cold. She's the kind of person who builds a trap, not the kind who uses a hammer. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was an execution. And you don't execute someone like that with janitor's supplies." Talia stared at him for a long, silent moment. She'd heard 1,000 jailhouse theories, 1,000 desperate lies. But this one was different. It wasn't vague. It was specific. "Celia Hayes, Skunkworks, Atomizer." "Find her," Reese pleaded. "She's the only one who knows. She's terrified of Rowena. I've seen them in the hall. She flinches when Rowena speaks to her. She'll know." Talia nodded slowly, packing her briefcase. The brief flicker of interest was gone, replaced by the grim mask of her job. "I'll look into it. It's a long shot, Reese, a very long shot. Right now, you need to prepare for your arraignment. It's in 2 hours. They're going to throw the book at you. Don't say a word. Let me do the talking. Understand?" Reese just nodded, his throat tight. He was led back to his cell, the sharp lump of the nozzle in his boot his only comfort. The courtroom was a blur of polished wood and indifferent faces. Reese was marched in, his hands cuffed in front of him, his feet shuffling in leg irons. The blue scrubs, identical to the ones worn by the other half-dozen men waiting for their turn, felt like a costume of guilt. He scanned the gallery, his heart pounding, desperate and terrified to see Luna. She wasn't there, only Mrs. Petrov, sitting in the back row, her face pale, her hands twisting a handkerchief. Their eyes met, and she gave him a small, trembling nod. Docket number 73-904, People vs. Reese Calder. Charges are attempted murder in the first degree, assault with a deadly weapon. The judge, a woman with a face that looked like it had been carved from granite, read in a monotone. The prosecutor, a young, ambitious man with a razor-sharp suit and shark-like eyes, stood. Your Honor, the people's case is overwhelming. The defendant, a disgraced former paramedic, used his position as a janitor to gain access to the victim, Ms. Anya Thornton. He used his specialized knowledge to create a rare poison, a fact corroborated by the precursor chemicals found in his personal locker. He also saved her life. Talia Weir's voice was sharp, cutting through the prosecutor's smooth narrative. A calculated act, Your Honor, the prosecutor shot back, not missing a beat. A twisted hero complex. The defendant created the crisis so he could solve it, proving his worth. He was only stopped when the victim's 8-year-old daughter walked in, forcing him to switch tactics and call 911. Furthermore, we have a sworn statement from the victim's sister, Ms. Rowena Vance, who states the defendant had been seen lingering and acting obsessively around the victim's office for weeks. He is a danger to the community, and given the victim's comatose state, he is a severe flight risk. The people request bail be set at $5 million. $5 million. Reese felt the air leave his lungs. It was a life sentence. Your Honor, Talia stood, her voice steady and strong, a rock in the churning sea of lies. My client has no criminal record. He is a single father whose 10-year-old daughter is entirely dependent on him. He has lived in the same apartment for 6 years. He is not a flight risk. The prosecution's case is built on a narrative, not on facts. The fact is, Ms. Thornton is alive today only because of Mr. Calder's intervention. We ask for a reasonable bail, and we will plead not guilty to all charges. The judge looked down at Reese, her eyes unreadable. Given the severity of the charges, the overwhelming physical evidence, and the comatose state of the victim, this court finds that the defendant does pose a significant flight risk. Bail is set at $5 million. Remanded to custody. The gavel cracked, sharp and final. No! Reese's voice was a choked whisper. He stumbled as the guard pulled him back. Please! My daughter, I didn't do it. But the court had already moved on. His words were just noise, swallowed by the uncaring machine of justice. He was dragged out, his eyes locked on Mrs. Petrov, who was now openly weeping in the back row. He was loaded onto a bus, a rolling cage bound for Rikers Island, the nozzle in his boot feeling less like a key and more like a stone, dragging him to the bottom of the ocean. Talia Weir walked out of the courthouse, the morning sun feeling like an accusation. She had lost. She'd known she would, but the speed of it, the cold finality, still stung. She got into her rattling sedan, the interior already smelling like the stale coffee in her cup holder. She could go back to her office, file the perfunctory motions, and wait for the inevitable plea deal. That was the job. But the words atomizer and skunkworks echoed in her head. Reese wasn't a killer. He was a lot of things. Broken, desperate, terrified. But the cold, calculating mind of an assassin wasn't one of them. She'd seen those eyes 100 times. She pulled out her phone and did a quick search. Celia Hayes, Thornton Industries. She found her on a professional networking site. Executive assistant to the CEO. She called the main line for Thornton Industries. Celia Hayes, please. I'm sorry, Ms. Hayes is unavailable. A crisp, new voice answered. This is the acting CEO's office. How may I help you? Acting CEO, Talia asked, her stomach tightening. Yes. Ms. Rowena Vance has been appointed acting CEO by the board, effective this morning, in light of her sister's tragedy. I see, Talia said, her blood running cold. And Miss Hayes? Is she out sick? Ms. Hayes is on an unexpected, indefinite leave of absence, the assistant said, her voice brimming with professional dismissal. If you'd like to leave a message for Miss Vance. No, thank you. Talia hung up. Indefinite leave of absence. The day after her boss is poisoned and the janitor is arrested. This wasn't a long shot. This was a trail. Celia Hayes was running. She was terrified. And she was the only person alive, other than Reese and Rowena, who knew the truth. Talia started her car, her mind racing. She couldn't go to the police. Kincaid had his man. She couldn't trust anyone. She was a public defender with no resources, no badge, and no power, up against a brand new billion-dollar CEO who had just committed the perfect crime. She looked at the address she'd found for Celia Hayes online. It was a long shot, but it was the only one she had. She pulled into traffic, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. She had to find her. Celia Hayes' apartment building was a sleek, glass and steel tower that looked more like a corporate office than a home. It was a world away from Talia's own peeling paint walk-up. She double-parked, her car's rattling engine sounding disrespectful in the quiet, wealthy street. She buzzed apartment 1412. The speaker crackled, but there was no answer. She buzzed again. Nothing. Talia stepped back and looked up, shielding her eyes against the afternoon sun. The apartment was dark. Had she already fled? Or was she in there, hiding, too terrified to move? "Damn it, Celia," Talia muttered. She couldn't just leave. She tried the building's main door, locked. A resident, a man in a crisp suit carrying a small dog, walked out. Talia caught the door before it swung shut, giving him a distracted nod as she slipped inside. The lobby was silent, all marble and muted grays, smelling faintly of expensive air freshener. She took the elevator up. The quiet, high-speed whoosh, a stark contrast to the clanging cage at the courthouse. She found 1412 and knocked. A sharp, professional rap. "Miss Hayes? My name is Talia Weir. I'm an attorney. I need to speak with you. It's about Reese Calder." The silence on the other side of the door was absolute, but it felt heavy, watched. Talia was certain she was in there. "I know you're scared," Talia called, her voice low but carrying. "You have every right to be. They made Rowena Vance the acting CEO this morning." She was gambling, hoping the name would be a jolt. "They're lying about Celia Hayes being on indefinite leave. They're burying you, just like they're burying him." Still nothing. The peephole remained dark. Talia sighed. She couldn't force her way in. She pulled a business card and a pen from her purse. She scribbled on the back, her words fast and desperate. She jammed the card under the door, pushing it until it disappeared. "Please," she whispered to the door. "He's innocent. You know it. Don't let her get away with this." She turned and walked away, the sound of her own footsteps echoing in the plush hallway. Inside apartment 1412, Celia Hayes was pressed against the wall, her hand over her mouth, her breath coming in shallow, silent gasps. She had been hiding for 2 days. Ever since she'd seen the news of Anya's attack, she'd known. She'd known what that Skunk Works project was for. She had watched through her peephole as the strange, tired-looking woman knocked. She'd heard her. "Rowena Vance, acting CEO, burying you." The woman's words had been spikes of ice in her heart. Celia waited for a full 5 minutes after the sound of the elevator dinged and faded. Then, her hands shaking, she crept to the door and locked the deadbolt. She knelt, her fingers trembling as she slid the business card from under the door. Talia Weir, public defender. On the back, the messy handwriting was a lifeline. "Ms. Hayes, I'm Reese Calder's lawyer. He told me to find you. He told me to ask about the atomizer. He's innocent. You're in danger. Call me. We're the only ones who can stop her." Celia sank to the floor, the card clutched in her hand. Atomizer. He knew. The janitor, the ghost in the halls. He knew. He had found something. He wasn't the killer. He was the witness, just like her. The terror she'd been living with for 2 days crystallized into a new, sharper fear. Rowena hadn't just framed Reese. She'd done it knowing Celia was a loose end. The indefinite leave wasn't a kindness. It was a target. Rowena was giving her time to run or time to be found. Celia's mind flashed to a memory, so sharp it made her gasp. 3 weeks ago, a fight between the sisters, right in Anya's office. It was brutal. "It's a failure, Rowena!" Anya had yelled, slamming a binder on her desk. Your aerosol project is a black hole. It's unstable and our R&D partners are pulling out. Shut it down. That's final. Rowena's face had gone white, her voice a low, venomous hiss that Celia had never forgotten. You always do this. You always have to be the one on top. You'll regret this, Anya. I swear to God you will. At the time, it was just another corporate spat. Now, it was a confession. Celia's personal laptop chimed on the coffee table, an email notification. It was the first sound in the apartment in hours. She crept over. It was a new email, from a name she didn't recognize. The subject line was one word, hello. She opened it. There was no text, just an attachment, a single image file. It was a picture of her. It was a grainy, high-angle shot, clearly from a security camera. It was a time-stamped photo from 2 minutes ago. It showed her through her own peephole, looking out into the hallway as Talia Weir walked away. Someone was watching her, not just the building. Someone was in the building's security system. Celia screamed, a choked, terrified sound. She grabbed her purse, a burner phone she'd bought after a bad breakup, and her keys. She didn't take a coat. She didn't take a wallet. She ran to the door, fumbled with the locks, and burst into the hallway. She didn't wait for the elevator. She slammed her hand on the button for the fire stairs and plunged into the concrete well, her footsteps echoing a frantic, desperate rhythm as she ran for her life. Down 14 flights of stairs, the image of her own terrified eye burned into her mind. The concrete stairwell was a cold, echoing tube, amplifying the sound of her own frantic footsteps into a deafening, panicked rhythm. Celia's lungs burned, a sharp, acidic fire. She burst through the heavy fire door into the building's garage, her sneakers skidding on the polished concrete. She didn't look back. She didn't check for a tail. The image of her own eye, captured by an invisible watcher, was burned into her mind. She wasn't paranoid. She was prey. She hit the street, the late afternoon sun blinding her. The city noise, horns, sirens, the distant rumble of a subway, was a wall of sound. She ducked into an alley, her back pressing against the cold brick, her chest heaving. She fumbled in her purse for the burner phone and Talia Weir's business card. Her fingers, slick with sweat, could barely dial the number. Talia answered on the first ring, her voice sharp. Weir! She's watching me, Celia choked out, the words a sob. She sent me a picture. Through my peephole? Oh God, she was watching me. Talia's voice went dead calm, the kind of calm that cuts through panic. Where are you? Are you out? I'm in an alley. I ran. I'm on, I think it's 58th and 3rd. I don't know. Stay calm. Do not move, Talia commanded. I'm 5 minutes away. I'm coming back. Do you see a black sedan, a dark-colored car, new, parked near your building? Celia's blood froze. She peered around the edge of the alley. Down the street, idling near a fire hydrant, was a black Audi with tinted windows. It hadn't been there when she ran out. Yes, she whispered, her voice trembling. How did you know? Because it's been sitting there since I left. They weren't just watching you, they were waiting for me to leave. Walk east. Now, toward 2nd Avenue. Don't run, just walk. I'll pick you up in a gray Toyota. It's a piece of junk. You can't miss it, go. The line went dead. Celia shoved the phone in her pocket and forced her legs to move. Walk, don't run. Every step was an agony of restraint. She felt the eyes of the black Audi on her back, a physical weight. She turned the corner onto 2nd Avenue, her heart a trapped bird in her ribs. A moment later, Talia's battered sedan screeched to a halt beside her, the passenger door flying open. Get in! Get in! Celia dove into the car, a mess of old files and fast food wrappers. Talia hit the gas before the door was even closed, pulling a reckless U-turn that drew a chorus of angry horns. She sped downtown, her eyes flicking between the road and the rear-view mirror. Are they following? Celia panted. I don't think so. Not yet, Talia said, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. They're professionals. They won't make a scene unless they have to. They'll just log my plate and find me later. We don't have time. Talk to me. Atomizer. Skunkworks. What is it? Celia. Adrenaline still coursing through her, spilled everything. The words tumbled out, a frantic confession. It was Rowena's pet project, a pharmaceutical delivery system, an aerosol. She poured millions into it. Anya was furious. She said the R&D was unstable, that the partners were pulling out. "When was this?" Talia demanded, weaving through traffic. "The final fight was 3 weeks ago. I was in the office." Anya shut it down. She told Rowena to absorb the loss. Rowena, God, her face. She said, "You'll regret this, Anya. I swear to God you will." Talia swore, a sharp, vicious sound. That's it. That's the motive. A billion-dollar company and pure, bitter humiliation. She used her own failed, unstable weapon to kill her sister. What did he find?" Celia asked, her voice small. "The janitor, Reese. Your card said he knew." "He found the nozzle," Talia said, her voice grim. "The brass tip." He pocketed it before the police arrived. It's the one piece of evidence she couldn't wipe from a hard drive. It's the one thing that connects her directly to the crime. So we go to the police, right?" Celia asked, a fragile hope in her voice. "We give it to them?" "To Detective Kincaid." Talia laughed, a harsh, mirthless sound. "Kincaid? He's the one who's railroading Reese. He's got his disgruntled janitor narrative. He's got the planted precursor in Reese's locker. He's got Rowena's stalker story. He won't listen to us. He'll see you as an unhinged employee, an accomplice trying to cover for her boyfriend. He'll take the nozzle and lose it in evidence." Celia's hope died. "So what do we do?" "Rowena is the acting CEO. She has all the money, all the power. She has people watching me. She probably has people watching you now too. We're nothing." "We're not nothing," Talia said, her voice hardening with a cold, defiant anger. She pulled the car into a dark, underground parking garage, killing the engine. In the sudden silence, she turned to Celia. "We have the truth, and we have the witness, and Reese. Reese has the proof. But where is it?" Celia whispered. "This nozzle?" Talia looked at her, her face a mask of grim determination. "It's in the safest, most secure place in the entire city. A place not even Rowena's army of corporate spies can get to it." "Where?" "In Reese Calder's boot," Talia said. "Deep under the insole, and he's currently in a holding cell on Rikers Island." Celia stared at her, the sheer impossibility of their situation crashing down on her. The only proof that could save them was on a man who was already buried, in a place they could never reach. "So it's over," Celia whispered, the last of her fight draining away. "No," Talia said, her eyes glittering in the darkness. "It's not. You're the motive. He's the proof. I'm just the lawyer, and I'm about to become a very big problem." She pulled a wad of cash from her glove compartment. "Take this. It's all I have. Go to the Port Authority. Get on the first bus out of the state. New Jersey, Pennsylvania, I don't care. Find a cheap motel, pay in cash. Don't use your real name. Don't use your phone. I'll find a way to contact you when it's safe." "And you?" Celia asked, her hand trembling as she took the money. "I'm going to get that nozzle," Talia said, starting the car. "Even if I have to tear Rikers Island apart to do it." Talia floored the accelerator, her small car lurching away from the curb, leaving Celia Hayes to disappear into the anonymous, churning maw of the Port Authority bus terminal. The woman was a ghost now, her life reduced to a burner phone and a wad of cash. Talia felt a pang of guilt, but it was swallowed by a tidal wave of adrenaline. Celia was the motive, but Reese had the proof. And he was about to lose it. She drove with a reckless, focused fury, swerving through late-night traffic, laying on the horn, her mind racing. She knew the intake procedure at Rikers. Reese's civilian clothes, his boots, would be taken, bagged, and inventoried. The second a guard felt that lump in the insole, it was over. The nozzle would be found, logged as more evidence, and Kincaid's narrative of the cunning, obsessed janitor would be sealed in cement. She was in a race against a bureaucratic clock. The bridge to Rikers Island was a long, desolate span, lit by sickly orange lights. It felt like a gangplank into a concrete hell. She parked in the visitor's lot, grabbed her briefcase, and ran. her heels clicking on the pavement. She slammed her bar card against the glass at the visitors' center. Talia Weir, public defender. I need an immediate emergency privileged consultation with my client, Reese Calder. Inmate 3904. He's in intake, now. The guard, a large man with eyes as dead as the fluorescent lights, sighed. Counselor, it's after 10 p.m. Intake's a madhouse. You can see him in the morning. No, Talia said, her voice dropping, a cold, sharp edge she rarely used. You will pull him from that line and put him in a contact room, or in 5 minutes I'll be on the phone with a warden, and in 10 I'll be filing a writ of habeas corpus for denial of counsel. This is a time-sensitive, privileged matter regarding his immediate safety. Do you want the paperwork for that? The guard stared at her. He saw she wasn't bluffing. He hated lawyers, but he hated writs more. He spat a curse, picked up his phone, and barked into it. Get Calder, Reese, 3904, from the intake line. Put him in attorney room C. Yeah, she's here, and she's a handful. 10 minutes later, Reese was shoved into a small, gray-painted room. A single metal table was bolted to the floor. The air was cold. He was still in his janitor's uniform, his face pale and gaunt, but his eyes were sharp with panic. He saw Talia. They were about to, he whispered, sitting down, his leg bouncing. The boots. They're taking them. Talia slid her briefcase onto the table, her back to the small wire mesh window in the door where a guard glanced in. Bored. I found her, Reese. I found Celia. His head snapped up. She's safe. She's gone. She's on a bus out of state. But she told me everything. The words came out in a fast, low whisper. The R&D lab, the atomizer project, the fight between Anya and Rowena. Anya shut it down. Rowena swore she'd regret it. Reese let out a shaky breath. It was true. He hadn't been crazy. Rowena is hunting her, Reese. They sent a man to her apartment. They sent her a picture of herself through her own peephole. This isn't just a frame-up, it's a clean-up. And you, she tapped the table, you are the last piece of evidence. Reese looked at the guard, who was now texting on his phone, then back at Talia. She's right. Kincaid won't listen. He has his story. The solvent in my locker. That's all he needs. I know, Talia said, her eyes intense. Which is why I'm here. Your boots, Reese. They're going to find it. They'll say you were hiding more parts of the weapon. They'll bury you and they'll bury me for knowing. I need it. Give it to me. Now. Here? How? They'll search you on the way out. They'll x-ray my bag, Talia said, her voice tight. But they can't search my legal files without a warrant. Attorney-client privilege. It's a risk. It's the only risk we have. Reese didn't hesitate. He'd seen the black Audi. He'd heard about the picture. Talia was in as deep as he was. He bent down, his back to the window, and fumbled with his boot, his cuffed hands making the movement awkward. He winced as he dug his fingers inside the insole, his heel raw from the metal. He pulled his hand out, a small, dark object hidden in his palm. Talia had her briefcase open. A thick file, stamped People vs. Calder, was on top. She lifted the cover page, which detailed the overwhelming evidence against him. Reese slid the small brass nozzle across the table. With a single, smooth motion, Talia palmed it and slid it deep between the pages of the police report, right next to the description of the precursor found in his locker. She closed the file. She snapped the heavy metal latches on the briefcase shut. The click-click sounded as loud as gunshots in the tiny room. What now? Reese asked. His foot felt strange, empty. He felt undefended. Now, Talia said, standing up, her face a mask of cold resolve. Her briefcase felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. You survive. You don't talk to anyone. You don't make any deals. You wait. I'm going to war. The guard, seeing her stand, rapped on the door. Time's up, counselor. Talia gave Reese one last nod. I'll be back. She walked out of the room, down the long green corridor, her steps measured and even. She walked to the security checkpoint, her heart hammering a frantic, threefold rhythm against her ribs. She placed her briefcase on the conveyor belt for the X-ray. The guard watched the screen, his eyes bored. He saw a laptop, a mess of papers, a phone charger. The small brass nozzle, thin and lying flat within a thick stack of legal briefs, was invisible. Just a blur, lost in the paper and metal binder clips. The briefcase slid out the other side. Talia picked it up. She was through. She walked out of the Rikers Island Visitors Center, the cold night air hitting her face. She had the bomb. Now she just had to figure out how to detonate it without blowing herself up in the process. Talia's briefcase was a lead weight in her hand, the small, sharp-edged nozzle inside feeling less like a key and more like a live grenade. She got into her car, locked the doors, and sat for a full minute, her breath fogging the windshield in the cold night air. She couldn't go home. She couldn't go to her office. The black Audi meant she was compromised. Rowena's people were professionals. They wouldn't have just watched Celia's apartment. They would have watched the courthouse. They would have seen her. They had her face, her car, her license plate. Going to any known location was a death sentence, or at the very least, a guarantee she'd be cornered and the nozzle taken. She was an island. She had a piece of metal she claimed was a murder weapon, and a witness she'd just sent hundreds of miles away on a bus. Kincaid had a mountain of fabricated evidence, a high-profile suspect in a cage, and a grieving, powerful CEO feeding him a perfect story. It was an unwinnable fight. Unless she changed the rules, Kincaid wouldn't listen to her. He saw her as an obstacle, a bleeding-heart public defender. But he might listen to someone else, someone he'd already been forced to respect. She pulled out her phone and dug through the preliminary case file Kincaid had dumped on her. The witness list. She found the name. Lead paramedic Gavin Brentar. The man who had almost administered the wrong drug. The man who knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that Reese Calder had saved Anya Thornton's life. She found his number through a paramedic union registry, a perk of her job. It was almost midnight, but she didn't care. She dialed. It rang 4 times, then a groggy, angry voice answered. This better be a "someone is dying" call. Paramedic Brentar. My name is Talia Weir. I'm the public defender for Reese Calder. A heavy sigh on the other end. Look, lady, I already gave my statement to the cops. The guy was a hero. He made the right call. But I can't help what they found in his locker. I'm off shift. Goodbye. They're framing him, Talia said, the words a sharp, fast burst. And I have the proof. The real murder weapon. The one he found, the one the police didn't. The one that proves it was an execution, not a janitor's rage. Silence. Brentar was listening. I need you to look at it, Talia pleaded, her voice dropping, all the lawyerly bravado gone, replaced by raw, desperate sincerity. You're a medical professional. You're the only other person at the scene who knows what Reese did. I'm being followed. I can't go to the police. I need someone to verify what I have. Please, he saved your patient. Help me save him. Another long pause. She heard him rub the sleep from his face. Where? He finally grumbled. The Atlas Diner. On the corner of Lex and 34th. It's open all night. I'm 10 minutes away. I'll be there in 20, he said, and the line went dead. Talia drove, her eyes glued to the rear-view mirror. No black Audi, no headlights following her turns. She got to the diner, a bright chrome and neon box humming in the dark, and slid into a back booth, the briefcase on her lap. She ordered a black coffee she knew she wouldn't drink. Gavin Brentar walked in exactly 20 minutes later. He was in street clothes, a heavy jacket zipped up, his face lined with exhaustion and suspicion. He spotted her and slid into the booth, his broad shoulders filling the space. This is insane, counselor. You know that, right? You're chasing shadows. Am I? Talia said. She didn't waste time. She unlatched her briefcase. She took out the file, PEOPLEV. Calder. She opened it and took out the nozzle, wrapped in a tissue. She slid it across the table. Brentar looked at it, his brow furrowing. What is this? A piece of a pen. Reese found it under Anya Thornton's desk right after she collapsed, Talia said, her voice low. I think it's the tip of an atomizer, a custom-built delivery system for an aerosolized poison. The kind that would create a fine, breathable mist. The kind that would explain the faint almond smell Reese detected. and why there was no trace on the teacup. Brentar's suspicion vanished, replaced by a dawning, clinical horror. He picked up the nozzle, his thick fingers surprisingly delicate. He turned it over, his eyes scanning the intricate machining, the pinprick aperture. "Holy," he whispered. He wasn't a doctor, but he'd spent 20 years working with high-end medical tech. "This isn't from a hardware store. The threading is too fine. The aperture is laser drilled. This is specialized, like a nebulizer, but high pressure, military grade. I've never seen anything exactly like it, but it's not a toy. It's a tool." He looked up, his eyes meeting hers, and she saw it. He believed her. "An aerosolized cyanide," he breathed, the full implication hitting him. "The perfect delivery." No needle, no tainted drink, just the air she breathes at her desk. "And who would have access to that kind of tech?" Talia pressed. "Not a janitor," Brentar said, his voice grim. "This is lab level, R&D. This is something else." "It's Rowena Vance," Talia said. "Her Skunk Works project. Anya shut it down. Reese just got in the way. Kincaid has a bottle of planted solvent and a fake story. I have the murder weapon." Brentar put the nozzle back on the table, his face hard. He was a man who saw the world in black and white, life and death, protocol and chaos. Reese had followed a protocol even he didn't know, and saved a life. The cops were breaking protocol and burying a good man. "Okay," he said, his voice a low rumble. "I'm in." "What's the play?" "You're right. You can't just walk this into the precinct. Kincaid will bury it." "No, we can't," Talia said, a cold, sharp plan forming in her mind. "But he can't bury you. And he can't bury a press conference." "Whoa, press!" Brentar said, his hands up. "I'll lose my job." "You'll save a man's life," Talia countered. "We're not going to the press. We're going to the hospital. We're going to St. Jude's, right now." "To do what?" Kincaid's got a guard on her door. "I know," Talia said, her eyes glittering with a dangerous, brilliant light. "And Kincaid is going to meet us there. You're going to call him. You're going to say you're at the hospital for a follow-up, and you realized something new about the Thornton case. Something that proves the precursor in the locker is a lie. You, a decorated paramedic, have an exculpatory piece of medical evidence. He'll come. He has to. He can't ignore you." "And when he gets there?" "When he gets there," Talia said, sliding the nozzle back into her briefcase and snapping it shut. "I'll be waiting. And you won't be his only surprise." St. Jude's Hospital at 2 in the morning was a different world. The daytime chaos was replaced by a heavy, sterile silence, broken only by the distant squeak of rubber soles and the low electronic hum of life support machines. The ICU was a small, self-contained unit, and at the end of the hall, just as Talia had expected, sat a uniformed police officer outside Anya Thornton's room. He was young, his chin dipping to his chest as he fought sleep. Talia and Brentar stopped at the nurse's station, keeping their distance. Brentar pulled out his phone, his face grim in the harsh fluorescent light. "You ready for this?" he muttered to Talia. "Just make the call," she said, her heart a cold, heavy knot. Brentar took a deep breath and dialed. He held the phone to his ear, his professional paramedic voice clicking into place. "Detective Kincaid? This is Gavin Brentar, lead paramedic from the Thornton scene. I know what time it is. I'm at St. Jude's. I was reviewing the preliminary tox report with the night shift toxicologist. No, I'm here now, and what I'm seeing doesn't just contradict your case, it makes it impossible." Brentar paused, listening, his face a mask of stone. "Because your precursor evidence is wrong, Detective. The solvent in that locker was an organophosphate. That presents with a very specific cholinergic toxidrome. Sludge syndrome, you know it. But Miss Thornton, she presented with a classic cyanide toxidrome, pinpoint pupils, bradycardia, and that scent. They are not the same. That solvent could not and did not create the poison that's killing her. Your case is medically unsound. Yes, it is exculpatory. You need to get down here, now." He hung up, not waiting for a reply. "He's coming," Brentar said, his voice a low rumble. "And he's not happy. He's not supposed to be happy, Talia said. He's supposed to be cornered. They waited. The 10 minutes that followed were the longest of Talia's life. The young cop by Anya's door eyed them, his suspicion growing. He put his magazine down and sat up straight, his hand resting near his sidearm. The elevator dinged, and Detective Kincaid stormed out, his rumpled suit looking even worse than before, his face dark with fury. He strode down the hall, his eyes locked on Brentar. "This is a circus, Brentar," Kincaid snapped, his voice a harsh whisper. "You call me out of bed for a lab report you could have emailed?" Then he saw Talia, standing just behind the paramedic's broad shoulder. His face went from angry to thunderous. "You, of course. This is a setup. You're interfering with a police investigation, Weir. You're bordering on obstruction." "I'm bordering on saving my client's life," Talia shot back, stepping out from behind Brentar. "And you're bordering on railroading an innocent man." "My case is solid," Kincaid spat. "Your case is junk," Brentar interjected, his voice carrying the weight of 20 years of saving lives. "I just told you. The medicine doesn't work. The solvent in that locker is a red herring. It's the wrong chemical family. It's like trying to build a bomb with baking soda. It's a plant, a bad one." Kincaid was momentarily stunned. A lawyer's theory was one thing. A lead paramedic's professional testimony was another. It created reasonable doubt. It created a problem. "So what?" he finally said, turning on Talia. "Even if he's right, it doesn't mean your man is innocent. It just means we're missing a piece. So what's your grand theory, counselor? The one you ambushed me with?" "It's not a theory," Talia said. She unlatched her briefcase. The young cop at the door was watching them now, his hand on his weapon. Talia ignored him. She took out the file, opened it, and dumped the small, gleaming brass nozzle onto a sterile metal tray at the nurse's station. The clink was deafeningly loud in the quiet hall. "This," she said, her voice shaking but clear, "this is your missing piece. This is the murder weapon. Or part of it. The part Reese Calder found under Anya's desk. The part your team missed because they were too busy planting evidence in his locker." Kincaid stared at the nozzle. His mind flashed back to the phone call he had just received. A corporate retrieval specialist. He looked at the small, intricate piece of brass. This wasn't a janitor's tool. It was a professional's. Talia's spy movie plot and the high-tech atomizer suddenly felt terrifyingly real. His eyes snapped up to Talia, a new, dangerous light in them. You were at the apartment. You contaminated my crime scene. I got the evidence you were too blind to look for." Talia's voice rose, echoing. "This is the tip of a high-pressure atomizer, custom-machined. From Rowena Vance's Skunk Works R&D lab. The one Anya shut down. The one Rowena used to murder her sister and frame my client to cover her tracks. That is the single most insane," Kincaid began, his hand moving toward Talia, ready to arrest her. His phone buzzed. A high-priority vibrating ring. He ignored it. "Rowena Vance has an army of lawyers," he hissed. "You have a piece of junk brass." The phone buzzed again, insistent, frantic. "Damn it!" Kincaid snarled, ripping it from his pocket. "Kincaid, what?" He went still. The color drained from his face. Talia and Brentar watched as the detective's entire worldview, his solid case, evaporated in real time. "Say that again," Kincaid whispered, his eyes wide. He listened. "A payroll match? To Thornton Industries, a corporate retrieval specialist." He looked up, his gaze locking with Talia's, his expression a mask of dawning horror. "Boss, he's here," the voice on the phone said. "His rental car, we just got a flag. He used his passkey in the garage. He's in the hospital, right now." Kincaid looked at the nozzle. He looked at the uniformed cop, who was now standing, confused. He looked at the closed door to Anya Thornton's room, the only person who could wake up and destroy Rowena for good. The disgruntled janitor narrative. The stalker story. It didn't include a special forces-level retrieval expert. Talia's spy movie plot was the only one that fit. The man wasn't just in the building. He was here to finish the job. Kincaid didn't apologize. He didn't hesitate. He drew his weapon, his voice dropping into a cold, hard command. "Officer, secure that door. Nobody in or out. Code 10-31. Officer needs assistance. St. Jude's ICU. Possible armed suspect 10-94 on this floor. Lock this building down now." The officer by Anya's door fumbled for his radio, his eyes wide. "Code 1031, ICU, shots." Before he could finish, the world vanished. Click, hum, thud. The main lights of the ICU snapped off, plunging the hallway into a terrifying deep darkness. The only light came from the sickly green, glowing exit signs and the flashing red lights on the wall-mounted battery backups. The steady, rhythmic beeping of the heart monitors didn't stop, but they were now joined by a high-pitched, frantic squeal as the backup power kicked in. "He cut the power!" Kincaid's voice was a roar in the dark. He snapped on a small tactical flashlight from his belt, the beam cutting a sharp cone through the gloom. "He's here! Brentar, officer, secure that door! Don't let him in!" Brentar and the young cop scrambled to the door, placing their bodies in front of it. "It's a maglock, detective," the cop yelled, his voice cracking. "Power's cut, it's not secure." "Talia, get behind me," Kincaid ordered, pushing her against the wall behind him, his weapon up, scanning the dark corridor toward the stairwell. A soft thud echoed from the stairwell door. Then, a metallic click. He wasn't trying to be quiet. He was trying to get in. "He's at the stairs!" Kincaid shouted. But he was wrong. Thwip, thwip. The sound was soft, like wet cloth snapping. The young officer at Anya's door grunted, his knees buckling. He looked down at his chest, a dark spreading stain on his light blue shirt, his expression one of pure confusion. He slid down the wall, his radio clattering to the floor. "Officer down!" Brentar yelled, diving for cover behind a mobile crash cart. From the other direction, from a dark alcove by the nurse's station, a figure emerged. He was dressed in dark blue scrubs, a surgical mask covering his face. He'd been there the whole time, a wolf in the fold. He held a silenced pistol in a gloved hand. Kincaid spun, his flashlight catching the man's eyes. The consultant. He fired, the sound of his unsilenced weapon, a deafening boom that shattered the silence. The muzzle flash, a blinding white star. The consultant didn't flinch. He dove behind the nurse's station, firing back with his quiet, deadly thwip, thwip, thwip. Sparks exploded from the wall just above Talia's head, raining plaster dust down on her. Kincaid grunted, ducking back. "He's trying to get to the door!" Talia screamed, seeing the man's focus. He wasn't trying to kill them. He was trying to get to Anya. Brentar, unarmed, made a choice. He abandoned the flimsy cover of the cart and threw his entire body against Anya's door, shielding the lock and handle. "You'll have to go through me, you bastard!" The consultant rose from behind the desk, his weapon steady. He was aiming center mass right at Brentar. He had a clear shot. "No!" Talia screamed. She wasn't a hero. She wasn't a cop. She was a lawyer with a briefcase. She did the only thing she could. She threw it. The heavy briefcase, weighed down by the metal latches and her case files, spun end over end down the hallway. It was a clumsy, desperate, impossible throw. The consultant, his gun trained on Brentar, saw the motion at the last second. He flinched, turning his head. The corner of the briefcase caught him square in the temple with a sickening crack. His shot went wide, punching a hole in the ceiling. He staggered, his pistol clattering to the linoleum, his hand flying to his head. He looked at Talia, his eyes wide with surprise, before his knees gave out, and he collapsed, unconscious, in a heap on the floor. Silence. The hallway was plunged back into a ringing, deafening quiet, broken only by the frantic squeal of the battery alarms and the smell of gunpowder. Kincaid, his face pale, slowly rose from cover, his gun trained on the unmoving man. He kicked the silenced pistol away. He looked at Brentar, who was panting, his back still pressed to Anya's door. He looked at Talia, who was shaking so hard she was sliding down the wall, her hands over her mouth. And he looked at the floor. The briefcase had burst open on impact. Its contents were scattered across the hall, legal briefs, pens, and a lipstick. And there, lying in the center of the floor, gleaming under the green emergency light, was the small, intricate brass nozzle. Kincaid stared at it. He looked at the professional killer on the floor. He looked at the dead officer. He looked at the nozzle. "My God, counselor," he panted, his voice a hoarse whisper. "You were right. You were right about all of it." Just then, the main power generators kicked in, the lights flickered, hummed, and then flooded the hallway in a sudden, harsh, brilliant white. The battery alarms went silent. The door to Anya Thornton's room, the one they had been so desperate to protect, opened. A nurse, her face a mask of pure terror, peered out. I heard gunfire. Is she?" Brentar turned, his hand on the door. "Is she what? Is she okay?" The nurse just pointed back into the room, her hand shaking. She's awake." Kincaid, Talia, and Brentar froze, their faces a mixture of shock, exhaustion, and disbelief. The hallway was a scene of chaos, a dead officer, an unconscious assassin, and scattered legal files. And from the center of it, the door to the miracle. Kincaid holstered his weapon, his movement stiff. "Get a bus down here," he said to Brentar, his voice a hoarse rasp. "For the officer. And get a uniform on this piece of trash." He kicked the consultant's sidearm away. He looked at Talia, his gaze unreadable, then nodded toward Anya's room. "After you, counselor. You earned this." Talia walked in, her legs shaking. Brentar followed, his medical instincts taking over. Kincaid stood in the doorway, a silent, grim sentinel. Anya Thornton was sitting up, propped against a mound of pillows. She was pale, tubes still in her nose, an IV in her arm. But her eyes were open. They were the same sharp, intelligent eyes Reese had seen in her photo, but now they were clouded with confusion and pain. They fixed on Talia, then on Brentar. You're safe, Miss Thornton," Talia said, her voice soft. "It's over." Anya's throat worked, her voice a dry, paper-thin whisper. "Lyra, my daughter, is she?" "She's safe," Kincaid said from the doorway. His voice was gentle, a tone no one in the room had ever heard him use. "She's safe, ma'am. But we need to know. Who did this to you?" Anya's eyes filled with tears, a mixture of pain and a sudden, sharp memory. Her gaze locked with Kincaid's. She didn't have the strength to speak, but her mouth formed a single, unmistakable word. "Rowena." It was all Kincaid needed. The final nail. He pulled out his phone, his back to the room. His voice was low and cold as ice. "Get me the DA. I don't care what time it is, wake him up. We're dropping all charges against Reese Calder, effective immediately. I want him processed out of Rikers in the next hour. Yes, I'm sure. Because I'm standing next to the victim who's awake. And I'm adding Murder 1 and Conspiracy to Rowena Vance's sheet." An officer is down. He hung up. He looked at Talia, a deep, weary respect in his eyes. "Go get your client, counselor. I'm having him released to your custody at the front gate." The clank of the cell door sliding open was so sudden it made Reese jolt awake. He was on a cot at Rikers, the nozzle-shaped bruise on his heel a dull throb. "Calder, on your feet. You're out," the guard said, his voice bored. Reese stared, uncomprehending. "Out? What? A transfer? Out. Released. Charges dropped. Let's go." Reese moved in a daze. He was processed, handed his belongings, and pointed toward the final gate. He walked down the long concrete bridge, his steps unsteady. The pre-dawn air was cold, stinging his face. He saw a single car idling by the gate, its headlights cutting through the mist. Talia's beaten-up Toyota. He expected to see her, but the driver's side door opened and Mrs. Petrov got out, her face streaked with tears. "Ilara? What?" "She called me." The old woman wept, rushing to him, grabbing his arm. "Talia. She said it was over. She said you were free." Reese's heart was pounding. Where is Luna?" The back door of the car opened. A small figure, still in her pajamas and a winter coat, scrambled out. She stood in the car's headlights, her hair a mess, her teddy bear clutched in one hand. "Daddy!" Reese's world, which had been gray concrete and steel bars, exploded into brilliant, painful color. "Luna!" He ran, his legs weak, and fell to his knees on the pavement. She slammed into him, her arms locking around his neck, her small body trembling. "Daddy!" "You came back. You came back." Reese couldn't speak. He just held her, his face buried in her hair, his body shaking with great silent sobs. He clutched his daughter to his chest, the weight of her in his arms, the only real thing in a world that had gone insane. He was free. He was a father. It was all that mattered. 2 weeks later, Reese sat in the front row of a packed hospital auditorium. He wore an ill-fitting suit Talia had bought him. Beside him, Luna, in a new dress, held his hand tightly. On the stage, Anya Thornton sat in a wheelchair, her voice still weak but her eyes made of steel. Beside her stood a humbled Detective Kincaid. "Rowena Vance's trial will proceed," Anya said, her voice amplified by the microphone. "And so will the trial of the consultant she hired, who, thanks to Detective Kincaid, was apprehended trying to flee the country. But that is not why we are here." She turned her gaze to Reese. The cameras all turned with her, but Reese only saw her. "We are here because of this man." Reese Calder, a man who, when faced with an impossible situation, did not hesitate. "He saved my life with his knowledge. He was then failed by a system that was manipulated by my sister. He was arrested, jailed, and his life was torn apart. Today, that ends." Kincaid stepped up, his voice grim. "Mr. Calder has been fully exonerated, all charges expunged. His name is clear." "But clear is not enough," Anya continued. "Thornton Industries and I, personally, owe Mr. Calder a debt that can never be fully repaid. But we will start. Today, I am announcing the creation of the Calder Family Fund, an endowment of $10 million, to provide legal and financial aid to victims of wrongful prosecution." The room erupted in applause. "And furthermore, Mr. Calder will be joining our team, not as a janitor, but as the new Director of Patient Safety and Procedural Review for the entire St. Jude's Hospital network. His unique perspective will ensure a tragedy like this never happens again." Reese stared, stunned. Luna squeezed his hand. "You're a boss, Daddy." That evening, Reese walked with Luna in the park, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and gold. He was in clean, new scrubs, his ID badge clipped to his pocket. He felt whole. The hollowed-out feeling was gone. A young boy on a scooter fell, his knee hitting the pavement hard, a cry of pain. Reese was moving before he even thought. He was kneeling, his voice calm, the old, familiar cadence returning. "Hey, buddy. You're okay. Let's take a look." He was a paramedic. He was a hero. He was, finally, just Dad. He looked up, and Luna was smiling at him, her face bright with a pride that was worth more than all the money in the world. He had his life back. And just like that, another story is over. I always wonder where you all are, and what you're doing, when you listen to these. If you feel like sharing, drop a comment and let me know. Are you on a long drive, working on something, or just winding down for the night? It's nice to picture the story finding a home with you, wherever you are. If you'd like more stories like this one to keep you company on your journey, you know what to do. Hitting subscribe and that little bell means you'll always have another one waiting for you when you need it. A simple like helps others find a companion in these tales too. Thanks for letting me share this space and time with you. It really is a privilege. Until the next one, stay safe out there.